Jeremy Sports Network coming to you live. JSN Boxing is here. Man, what a fight between George Groves and Chris Eubanks Jr. They gave us everything we could ask for as a fight fan in this fight. Now, we're going to break down almost each and every round in this fight because this fight was just that good. It was just as advertised. But as a fight fan, could you really be satisfied with what it is you just got? Right? I did not think Groves was going to be as agile as he was in this fight. I did not think that Eubanks was going to be subject to not really be, as strong early on. Because when you go back to the fight early, it made you think about the Billy Joe Saunders fight with Chris Eubanks. When he took on Billy Joe Saunders, how Eubanks was not effective in the early rounds, but he was very effective in the second round. The second half of the fight. And what we got here was a hell of a fight between these two guys. And hats off to both fighters. They both did a tremendous job. I love what both fighters brought to the table. But one thing in particular that I was not happy with in this fight was Chris Eubanks Sr. not telling his son exactly what he needed to do in order to win. I didn't hear it from him. But in the second half of the fight, like we said, we're going to go through each round and talk about each round. But a lot of people, as you can see right now on the poll, a lot of people had Chris Eubanks winning this fight. I even had him winning this fight. I was believing in Chris Eubanks to come out and be victorious in this fight. Now, there are some things that Chris Eubanks talked about as it pertains to this fight in particular. He was talking about, and I love his post interview. You could go back and check out the post interview. He gave a tremendous amount of respect to George Groves, given the fact that George Groves did a little bit more than what Chris Eubanks thought George Groves was going to do. And the fact that he paid homage to that, much respect to Chris Eubanks. He did admit that he was underestimating George Groves and what George Groves was going to bring to the table on today. But man, it was as advertised in this fight. Both fighters early on was trying to figure each other out. I think George Groves was more comfortable early on, so therefore he was able to score a lot of the early rounds. But as the fight continued, man, Chris Eubanks showed heart that I probably thought he didn't have, because he was cut due to an accidental headbutt. But he was cut in this fight. But this guy kept battling and kept coming forward. And the pressure started to come on in the late rounds. But I felt as though George Groves was able to hold his own and still be able to win some of those rounds. Given the fact that the pressure from Eubanks was welling in on him, and it was almost to the point to where you felt as though Eubanks had enough in the tank to come away with the victory. You felt as though he had enough in the tank. And if you ask me, I'm sitting here and I'm like, you know what? This has to be one of the best fights of the year so far, even though we didn't have many. But this was everything that you can ask for as a fight fan. It was everything that you could ask for. And right now, as we're getting more people tuning in, I want to get you all thoughts on exactly what you seen in this fight. I know some people wasn't happy with the scorecards, and we're going to go through the scorecards and what was actually on the scorecards and what people thought about that. But a lot of people was not happy. A lot of people seen this fight as a draw, and you had some people seeing George Groves basically dominating Chris Eubanks. This is the stuff that I've been seeing, while we were doing our live tweeting on Twitter. Because we tweeted live throughout the fights. Those of you who are just now tuning in, we do tweet and have live fight chats. And during the live fight chat on Twitter, this is what you were seeing. A lot of people were saying it was almost 50-50. And the second half was more so won by Eubanks. And the first half being won by Groves. And a lot of people seen this fight as a draw. One of my good friends who was live tweeting with boxing.com, Karen Tate, seen this fight as a draw. So I know I wasn't the only one seeing the same thing in the rings. Now, one thing as a fan, casuals who are tuning in to the show that are not hardcore fans, you have to learn how to not allow commentators to steer you away from what it is you're actually seeing in the fight. And I'm going to break that down and tell you exactly what I mean by that as we continue to get more people to tune in and go along with the show. Those of you who are tuning in, please like and share the show. It helps with the visibility of the show. We got a lot to talk about as this fight is concerned, and we have 2 more big fights coming on tonight. But with this fight with Chris Eubanks, what I had a problem with was him not closing the distance early on in the fight. I had a huge problem with it. And I thought that he was going to make the necessary adjustments in order to close in on George Groves. George Groves, if you ask me, did exactly what he needed to do, given the fact that he did win this fight. But he did exactly what he needed to do in order for himself to be considered successful. Right? You could hear his corner telling him to stay put, not be the aggressor, allow Eubanks to come to you, and you work as a counter puncher. And that is what he did all night. George Groves was the counter fighter. Eubanks landed some tremendous shots in this fight. But a lot of the judges, I'll put it like this, I ain't gonna say a lot of people, but the judges seen it different. And as I continue to share this show, I'm getting ready to go over these scorecards, because the scorecards, to me, I did not agree with what these scorecards were showing, given the fact that these fighters were both giving their all, and for them to have the wide spread in this fight, I'm not so sure that it's the right thing. I mean, 117 to 111, 116 to 112, 115, 113. The 115, 113 card I can agree with, because it wasn't far from what it is that I had. I had this fight scored as a draw. I felt as though Eubanks brought the pressure on later on in the fight. He won those rounds in the latter parts of the fight. And he brought this fight to where it could be close to even. But to sit here and say that it was a unanimous decision on George Groves' behalf, I just did not see it in this fight. I didn't see it. And I'm going to go through the comment sections and right now to see what a lot of you are saying. But if those of you agree with what it is that I'm saying, did you really see this fight being the way that it was? Did you think that George Groves was going to be able to have the ability to smuggle a lot of what Eubanks was trying to do? Because Eubanks was trying to get in on the inside, but he was not able to be as successful. He wasn't able to be as successful. Frederick Merritt said that cut changed a lot in the fight. That cut was an accidental headbutt. And I agree with Frederick. I'm okay with 115 to 113. But the 117 to 111, the 116 to 112, I was not okay with that at all, period. But I will say that cut did change a lot on Chris Eubanks' behalf. But I think as Chris Eubanks is concerned, that added fuel to the fire, right? That helped him be more aggressive and get inside like we wanted him to early on. Close the distance in on Groves, because Groves did exactly what he needed to do. And that was sit back, work the jab, right? And every time that Eubanks tried to come in, go ahead and wrap up with him. And Frederick is right. Groves was holding each and every time Eubanks tried to get in. Because when I was tweeting live in the fight, I was sitting here saying Eubanks needed to continue to get inside, let go of his hands, work the body, and throw those uppercuts that he was throwing, because he was slipping in those uppercuts, man, and they were landing, and they were having an effect on Groves. But when Groves wrapped up and the referee kept breaking it up, it cut on the momentum of what Eubanks was trying to do as a fighter. James Knight says Groves screwed Junior. I don't think it was much more of a schooling on his behalf, because I think it was more so that Junior was not able to do what's considered the basics in boxing. Cut off the ring. Cut your opponent off to where, you're able to close the distance and get inside. It's the same thing that we saw with Keith Thurman and Danny Garcia. We was on Danny Garcia's ass because Danny was not closing off the ring and cutting the ring off with Keith Thurman. So Thurman utilized his legs and was able to win this fight easy. George Groves also don't have the ability of Keith Thurman as far as ring generalship is concerned, but Groves did enough in order to win this fight. I'm not taking nothing away from what George Groves did at all. George Groves was phenomenal. I love what he brought to the table. I love the composure that George Groves had from round 1 to 12. I believe in round 12, the injury to his left arm, and I tweeted that soon as I saw him step back from Eubanks, and I saw that shoulder he kind of do that little funny thing with his shoulder. I said, oh my God, he has a shoulder injury. And then throughout the rest of the round, in round 12, you only seen him throwing the right hand. Eubanks had an opportunity right there to close the door, maybe score a knockdown that could change the fight in its entirety. If he would have scored a knockdown right there, it would have been a 10-8 round. And having a 115-113 card at the end, I mean, albeit with 117-111 and 116-112, damn, it could have at least made it a closer fight than what it was due, right? Jason Cumbro says, smarter fighter Groves. He boxed off the jab. Lovely. He was faster and he was relaxed. I agree. He did. Like I said earlier, he utilized the jab. He stayed in place, right? And he was able to get, his shots off faster than Eubanks was. Fedra says Eubanks should have used his jab. It was non-existent. You're right, man. Eubanks couldn't get anything going as far as his jab is concerned. I think it was more so of Eubanks. Anytime he threw a looping left hand or a left hook, he was scoring on those shots, and it was allowing him to get inside of Groves and being able to get the rest of his work off. But Groves was able to wrap up, referee break it up, and then Eubanks going back to not closing the distance and trying to figure out a way to get inside. Maybe it was because he was the shorter fighter with the shorter reach, maybe. His jab was just not there. Rayella said, Groves is the man. Junior is hype. Team Groves class act. I know a lot of you are George Groves fans. And I'm not taking away nothing from George Groves at all. Period. But you have to give credit to what Chris Eubanks brought to the table. He tried to make this a fight. He tried to make this a hell of a fight. Albeit the guy got worn down in the latter parts of the fight, but he was still there, standing toe to toe, trying to get inside of Groves. But I believe Groves and his ability was not allowing Junior to get off like how he wanted to. And he was doing some great work inside. Like I said, the slipping of the uppercut was there. And he was throwing it more with his right hand. But if he would have just slipped with his left hand, man, he could have landed tremendous shots with the uppercut with the left hand. It was there. I seen it. But everything was with the right hand with Eubanks when he had Groves on the inside, and Eubanks kept his composure and was able to hold off long enough for the referee to come step in, break the fighters up, and now back to square one for Eubanks figuring out, how can I get inside again? I don't think it was more so of a outclass of Groves doing it to Eubanks, but I think this fight was a little bit more even than what people are trying to say it is. And I agree with Jason. He said Saunders done the same things to Eubanks. Groves used the same game plan and it worked perfect. You're absolutely right. I think it was more so not being the same game plan exactly. I think it was more of being Eubanks fought this fight exactly how he fought Billy Joe Saunders. Right? Did nothing early on in the fight, but he brought the pressure later on in the fight. You have to fight a full 12 rounds. I don't know how many times we have to tell fighters, when you're in a fight, you cannot allow the fight to go to the scorecards and you did nothing in the early parts of the fight, right? We understand round one, you're trying to figure each other out. Round two, Eubanks, he was able to try to get inside and land big shots on Groves, but Groves kept that composure and remained calm. Round three, both fighters did an excellent job in round three. I believe that fight was that round three was kind of even. And then round four, Groves seemed to be coming on as the better fighter. But then you seen that transition in round 6 and 7 to where you felt as though Eubanks is now starting to make it a fight. But rounds 8 and 9, Groves kept doing the same thing he was doing in rounds 2, 3, and 4, which gave him those rounds. But rounds 10, 11, and 12, I felt as though Chris Eubanks was bringing so much pressure on and landing wonderful shots. I mean, I seen the Roy Jones, you know what I'm saying? The Roy Jones hook that he threw, that landed beautifully. But the counters from Groves after taking a shot, to me, was phenomenal. And hats off to Groves, man. He did exactly what a lot of people thought he wasn't going to do. And you can see in the polls, how many people was going to pick Groves to win? And in that poll, I believe that poll right there was over 200 people who voted, right? 200 people who voted in that poll. And a lot of people was picking Chris Eubanks to be the victor in this fight. Nobody said George Groves was going to do exactly what he did in this fight. I didn't hear it from nobody. I didn't see it in none of the feeds, none of the boxing groups. I didn't see it at all, period. I saw everybody saying that Chris Eubanks was going to dominate, was going to be the victor, going to get the knockout. Knock out George Groves, who showed a phenomenal chin in this fight. Now, those of you who tuning in, please like and share the show. It helps with the visibility of the show. This is the post-fight review of Chris Eubanks and George Groves. But man, hats off to George Groves though. Now, I have to ask you all this. This I'm not so sure about because I haven't heard the WBSS say anything as it pertains to injuries in this tournament. If Groves is not able to continue due to the simple fact that he hurt his shoulder and we seen the injury, we don't know what it is exactly. To me, I think it was more of a rotator cuff injury based upon how I saw, the shoulder if you go back and look at it, in the end of the 11th round, you could kind of see, well, not the end of the 11th round, but in the 12th round, or in the early parts of the 12th round, how that shoulder was just, you could just tell that it was either a dislocation or rotator cuff. Something went wrong. But if Groves is not able to continue, does Eubanks get the go ahead and fight in the final? I mean, I'm not sure about. And those of you who are tuning in, if you are sure about it, please let me know. Please share in the comment section, because I believe Chris Eubanks asked that same question in the post-fight interview. He's not sure as if he's going to be the one to go in the finals if Groves is not able to continue, barring injury. That I'm not sure about. But I don't think Chris Eubanks is done. Paulie Malignaggi tweeted that Chris Eubanks, he put out one hell of a fight. And that if he, continues to keep the model of what he did in the latter parts of the fight, he can be successful, man. Eubanks has the tools to be successful. At this point, it's more so about getting back to the fundamentals of boxing when you're taking on a guy like George Groves, WBA super middleweight champion. It was phenomenal performance on George Groves' behalf. I take nothing away from what he did. Jason said, fine, he was holding Groves, but he done the smart thing. Why do you have to stand and fight if you're a smarter fighter? I don't think it was more so about him standing and fighting. I think it was more about the referee kind of getting involved a little bit too much with the holding. Right? We knock fighters a lot, when we talk about them holding, we say whether they're scared or they're this, that, and the third, or whatever the case may be. Or is it strategic, right, to do the holding? On Groves' behalf, I felt as though those shots that he was catching from Eubanks, it was making him, hold. I'm not saying that it was a bad strategy on Groves' behalf, but it cut the momentum dramatically in this fight. It cut the momentum. And the fact that it cut the momentum in this fight, he didn't allow Junior to be able to get off really like he wanted to. And we said this earlier on. Was it a good strategy? Absolutely. Fedra said, I'm still trying to figure out what Eubanks' game plan was besides just trying to knock out Groves. Did anyone from his camp say what his backup plan was if he can't KO? Absolutely not. That's why I had a problem with his dad. I was like, dude, you're not telling your son anything that is needed for him to win at all. I felt as though his game plan should have been more of utilizing the jab, making sure you cut off the ring from Groves. You can't allow a fighter like Groves to be able to move. First of all, Groves is the bigger guy, right? And I felt as though Groves was going to be the one to bring the pressure onto Eubanks, making Eubanks fight off his back foot. That's what I thought. Because Groves have that ability to come forward and make you fight off his back foot or your back foot. He has that ability. But in this fight, he was very smart. He was very strategic with his game plan. George Groves, like Jason is saying, had a great game plan as far as sitting back and allowing Eubanks to come to him and dictate the rest of the fight from there and keep his composure. I think it was the composure of Groves is what won him a lot of rounds. He did not seem rattled at all, not one bit. But Eubanks seemed to be rattled on a multitude of occasions in this fight. We know the cut was an accidental headbutt, but it was twice that I felt as though Groves really scored a knockdown. And I was talking about early on when he caught Eubanks with a shot, and it seemed as though Eubanks' glove touched the canvas. I felt as though that was a knockdown. And then it was another knockdown that happened after that it was more so of a shove. But then the next knockdown that came after that, I felt as though that was a knockdown due to punches and fatigue on Eubanks' behalf. But they did not give him the knockdown. Wayne North said Groves schooled him proper. I like that. Groves schooled him proper. It wasn't more so like how people are thinking that Groves just totally outschooled Eubanks Jr. Period. I don't think it was like that. But I think from a not a professional standpoint, because they're both are professionals, but from a fighter with more experience, you could see that in George Groves than Chris Eubanks. Groves just seemed to have that experience. He was so comfortable. And Jason feels the same way. That was definitely a knockout or a knockdown. And I think, Groves was robbed of that twice. He was robbed of 2 knockdowns twice. And that right there alone changed the fight for me. I felt as though, the referee did everything it is he could to try to keep this fight clean amongst the 2 fighters. Dan Raphael tweeted out during the live tweeting of the fight that it's a hell of a fight when the referee has blood over his uniform. And this was exciting to me. But as a fight fan, when you break this fight down, Eubanks just wasn't the better opponent tonight. He wasn't. Just like Frederick Merritt was talking about, what was his game plan? I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was. I really thought I knew what Eubanks was going to do based upon him saying he was going to bring pressure. He said this to George Groves. I'm going to bring the pressure, right? And you heard Groves repeat this in the post-fight interview. I thought he was going to bring the pressure that he said he was going to do, but he did not do that. That's what I thought he was going to do. But he was not successful in doing it. But man, I'm not going to hold you all much longer because we have a lot more boxing coming on tonight. Devin Alexander fight. We have Danny Garcia versus Danny Garcia versus Brandon Bam Bam Rios live tonight. And what we're going to be doing for that fight tonight, those of you who are tuning in, go ahead and follow me on social media right now so you can get the notifications of when we go live. I will be sharing this throughout all of the boxing groups. But we're going to be doing a live fight chat for Danny Garcia and Brandon Rios on Jeremy Sports Network. Please follow it on Facebook. Follow me at Jeremy_sports on Twitter. Follow me. Do what you got to do to follow me. We can really get in tune with what's going to come tonight because we have some great fights tonight. I'm looking forward to seeing what Danny Garcia is going to do. I'm looking forward to seeing what he's going to do. Right now, as the polls is concerned, I'm finna go to the polls right now to see exactly who people pick to win this fight. And so far, Danny Garcia was leading the way as far as that fight is concerned. And I'm looking for it right now. Right now, Everybody has Danny Garcia winning this fight 84%. Have people, well, out of 128 votes, 84% of you are choosing Danny Garcia. 16% Brandon Rios. Nobody's giving Rios a chance. Just like George Groves. None of you gave George Groves a chance. 38% of you was choosing George Groves. Will we have an upset tonight? Because I don't think that was an upset. George Groves and Chris Eubanks. You know, I think it would have been an upset if Eubanks would have got the victory. It would have been an upset then. But with Groves defeating Eubanks, you can't call that an upset. You can't. But I thank each and every one of you guys for tuning in. Please like and share the show. It helps with the visibility of the show. And we will be back tonight, probably around 9:30. The live fight chat will be starting. I will do a prelim show before the fight so we can muster up and see exactly what everybody is going to see as this fight is concerned. I'm looking for Danny to do big things tonight. Danny has to make a statement tonight if he wants to be in consideration of Keith Thurman, Errol Spence, Sean Porter, Terrence Crawford. If he wants to be in that conversation of 147 pounds, this division, he has to make a statement tonight. And I'm talking about winning this fight against Brandon Rios by knockout. He has to. Shout out to Nick Delgado who's tuning in. Brandon Corey Cunningham is tuning in. Hey, shout out to all of you who have tuned in, man. Frederick, Jason, I appreciate you guys being a part of the live fight chat or the live chat. Thank you. And we're going to get ready for tonight. So be prepared, be ready. Those of you who will be tuning in, please follow me on social media. You can follow my personal page as well, Jeremy Flanagan, on Facebook. You have a lot of boxing content there. And tonight, man, I'm going to go ahead. Brandon's putting me on the spot. Who do I got for tonight? I'm picking Garcia only because Danny has to make that statement, like I said. I'm picking Danny because I want Danny to be in the fold as Errol Spence, Terrence Crawford, Keith Thurman, Sean Porter is concerned. Because that's going to help set up this tournament to figure out who's going to be undisputed at 147. And we're going to talk about that tonight as we get closer to this fight. I'm thinking that it's going to be a tournament style that's going to be put together courtesy of Heyman, Steven Espinoza, with these fighters that they have at 147. I think they're going to put together a tournament style. A tournament style in order to figure out who's going to be undisputed at 147. And this is going to be starting in the midsummer, right? Around that June, July, right after Crawford captured a title from Jeff Horn. Now it's going to start to set the tone to what we're going to see from the 147-pound division and how it's going to pan out. But Crawford has to capture a title first. Danny Garcia has to get a win first. Thurman has to come back and get his tune-up fight first. And then we'll go from there. Because the latter part of the year in boxing going on to 2019 is going to be phenomenal. Especially in this division. And I can't wait. So thank you all for tuning in. We will be back later on tonight. 9:30 is the time. Mark your calendars for it. Danny Garcia versus Brandon Rios. Devin Alexander versus Victor Ortiz. We will be going in on those fights. Please like and share the show. We are out. Peace.